The Baltic Sea might seem like a quiet corner of Northern Europe, but is it really so? There are oil rigs, there are wind farms, and there will be more and more. There are Baltic Sea protected areas, there are Natura 2000, there are shipping accidents, even though they are decreasing, but they still are. There are also illegal oil spills, even though they are also decreasing. Fisheries, of course. People are fishing the Baltic Sea for many centuries. And shipping, of course, we shouldn't forget the shipping. Shipping is probably one of the most traditional uses of the sea. And there are much more uses. This is just an example. So this is just to show you that actually the Baltic Sea might seem like a quiet place, but it's not. There are a lot of uses. Many of them are invisible, something that you cannot really say, like for example Natura 2000 or Baltic Sea protected areas. Shipping accidents, you don't see it, you don't see them every day. So the question here is, how can we organize these uses in a smarter way? Is there a way to do it? Well, that's why we have Maritime Spatial planning. That's why we have MSP. But why would we want to organize these uses in a smarter way? What are the benefits of MSP? Well, as George Patton said, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. And my interpretation of this quote is that it's better if you have a plan now and you don't have many conflicts than tomorrow that you will have maybe some conflicts or bigger conflicts. So we do MSP because this MSP is a way to look into the future and to avoid conflicts, to prevent conflicts. What conflicts? Well, one example of conflicts can be caused by shipping. I'm going to show you an animation that we made some years ago about shipping. So this is real data, this is shipping in real time sailing the Baltic Sea. So as you see, the amount of shipping of the ships that we have in the Baltic Sea is amazing. There are thousands and thousands ships every year in the Baltic Sea. So these ships can create some conflicts, and if we don't do MSP properly, the following example can be true, can be a reality. So imagine that we have a wind farm and we don't pump properly. What would happen in the future? This is, of course, a rather exaggerated example, quite dramatic, but you get the point. I mean, MSP is a way to avoid this kind of conflicts. Also, MSP is a way to increase coordination. We have to increase the coordination between different administrations in each country, because imagine that instead of this railway, we have an underwater cable or an underwater pipeline. So MSP is also a way of increasing coordination. We do MSP also to protect the environment. How do we protect the environment in MSP? Well, we have something called the ecosystem approach. And the ecosystem approach, there are many definitions of ecosystem approach. This is one of them adopted by HELCOM in 2003. And it says that the ecosystem approach is the integrated management of human activities. All these activities managed in an integrated way. Why? Well, we have to take action if something happens and affects the health of the marine ecosystem. So if we have this integrated management of human activities, then it's easier to take action. We want also this management, this integrated management, in order to get a sustainable use of ecosystem goods and services. And finally, we want this integrated management of human activities to achieve the ecosystem integrity. Now, this is a rather abstract definition. If you are not an ecologist or biologist like me, you might find this definition a bit difficult to understand. But I have always thought of this as this ecosystem approach term as this. As a balance, way in balance. So I think that the point here is that all uses should be balanced. No one should weigh more than the other. This is the way I interpret it. Okay, why do we do MSP? We do it also because we want to encourage investment. If we look into the future, if we are transparent, if we have clear rules, as I will tell later, then it's easier to help boost the development of, imagine, renewable energy or grids, or maybe to establish marine protected areas, to facilitate the investment in oil and gas. So MSP is also a way of encouraging this investment to bring money. Something that, in the European Union, they like to talk a lot about this blue growth. So MSP is a way of achieving this blue growth. Okay, so now we know that MSP is a way to organize the sea in a smart way, which allows us to look into the future, prevent conflicts, collaborate, protect the environment through the ecosystem approach, to increase the investment. And how do we do MSP? Big question. But before I explain how we do MSP, I would like to open a parenthesis to explain the differences between land use planning and MSP. And this is thanks to Jan Schmidt-Bauer-Kruna, whom he told me that he would present for you today, or will present. So, Jan, if you are there, thank you very much. It was very helpful. So the differences, because there are differences, as you might imagine. For example, in knowledge. We have a lot of knowledge regarding land use planning, but MSP is quite new, so we don't have that much. And with knowledge, I'm talking about processes, but also about data. I will talk later about data. Public participation incentive. There is a lot in land use planning, but there is not in MSP. So imagine that your municipality is planning to build a wind farm in your backyard. Would you protest? Imagine if instead this wind farm is planned somewhere offshore, somewhere where you cannot even see it. Would you protest? Probably not. Land ownership. This is pretty obvious. Of course, we have this land use planning on land, but we don't have it on sea. And holistic planning. This is the only one where there is not in land use planning, but there is in MSP. Because in land use planning there is a lot of sector-wise planning on larger scale. And in MSP it was recognized from the beginning that there should be a holistic approach point of view. And I will talk about this also a little bit later, because this is very important. And we do it in the Baltic Sea. Yeah, so now I close this parenthesis and I'm going to explain how is MSP done. Well, in the European Union we have the MSP directive, and this applies to all Baltic Sea countries except Misha's home country. So this MSP directive is a set of, we could say, it's a set of rules, set of minimum common requirements, and the European Union adopted it in 2014. And the idea was that, well, they felt that there was a need for a more efficient management. This was a way to avoid conflicts, what I mentioned earlier, to create synergies. And this was, as I said, adopted in 2014. So now we are in 2016. So countries still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to implement the MSP directive in their countries. And in the directive there is a paragraph which says, countries shall cooperate through regional sea conventions. How is this done in the Baltic Sea? Well, this is done in the Baltic Sea through the HELCOM-BASAP working group. HELCOM and BASAP are two separate organizations. HELCOM knows about environment, BASAP knows about planning, and the way I like to explain how these two organizations came together is through a love story. So, HELCOM BASAP is a love story, you will see. It's a love story with two main roles, HELCOM and BASAP. And HELCOM is 42 years old, she is middle-aged, she knows a lot about the environment. And then we have BASAP, and BASAP is younger, he is 24 years old, and he knows a lot about planning. And you know, couples always usually dream about having a house, having kids, having a dog, having a cat. But in this case, HELCOM and BASAP are different because they dream about having a coherent MSP across Baltic. And how did they get together? How did they fall in love? Well, this story goes back to 2007 when the Baltic Sea Action Plan was adopted by HELCOM. the Baltic Sea Action Plan is one of the main instruments in HELCOM to achieve a healthy Baltic Sea. And in one of these paragraphs in this plan, it says that HELCOM should develop by 2010 marine spatial planning principles based on ecosystem approach. So they sat down and they started discussing about what would be the main principles to achieve AMSP. And then they ended up with this list of 10 principles. You see here is this ecosystem approach. But then the question was, who is gonna apply these principles? We need. They thought that there was a need to having some kind of working group taking care that these principles were taken into account by all countries. So. In 2010, the HELCOM BASA MSP work group was created. So the idea of this group is to ensure that all the maritime spatial planning plans that are made by countries are coherent across borders, that there is not one that is mismatching with the other. This is very important to have like a common understanding of what do we have in the border. So this is something that I want to emphasize. The HELCOM BASAP work group does not make plans. All countries around the Baltic Sea make these plans. So what the HELCOM BASAP group is doing is to ensure that the plans are coherent here in this boarding, in the EZ, okay? So that there is not any... It's a way also to avoid conflicts. Okay, so now we know about the MSP directive, which I said it was a kind of rules, so minimum common requirements to achieve coherence and to avoid conflicts. And this is done in the Baltic Sea thanks to the HELCOM BASAP group, two organizations which are together to ensure the cooperation to achieve coherent MSP across borders. And now, I would like to tell you about one of the biggest challenges we face in MSP. You know, in 2007, as I told you, the Baltic Sea Action Plan was adopted, and in the same recommendation where it said that HELCOM should develop principles for MSP, there is a strong emphasis on something, and I wonder if you can guess what I'm talking about. I'm gonna let you some seconds for you to think about what is missing here. What word is missing here? There's only one word. You have a tip here. Ready? Okay, so hands up, how many of you guessed that we are talking about data? Of course, the people who wrote this recommendation in the Baltic Sea Action Plan in 2007 recognized already that data is very important, because actually without data you cannot do MSP. And this is something very close to me because actually I'm working with data. I can mention later what I'm working on right now. But to explain the challenge we have with data, I would like to introduce you to Kai the planner. So Kai is a maritime spatial planner. Kai likes sitting in his computer and elaborate plans in his national administration somewhere in the Baltic Sea. And now Kai is planning a wind farm somewhere in the Baltic Sea, somewhere close to, of course it has to be in his, inside his EEZ. And now he finds that this is the best place to plan the Baltic Sea, because he's in this country, he lives in this country, and he came to the conclusion that this is the best place because he has lots of data of his country, lots of data. But the problem is that he cannot find any data from this country. He cannot find barely any data of this country. So this is one problem, where to achieve this data, because he might be wrong. He might think, okay, I see in the data I have that there is nothing here, that this country has nothing planned, no conflict. But maybe he's wrong. Maybe he doesn't know that in some archive in this country there is a plan of a cable crossing his wind farm. This he doesn't know if he doesn't know where to access this data, if this data of this cable is not accessible. Now we have one of the ways you have to get Baltic Sea data is the Helcom map and data service, and here you can get data. And the only problem this map service has is that the data is centralized in one database. That means that countries send to us the data to a central database, and this data can get outdated relatively easily. So this is a problem. This is actually a problem that we are trying to solve in the project that I'm working on now, which is called Baltic Lines. And that's the reason I cannot be with you now, because I'm attending our partner meeting somewhere in some room, probably in this hotel. I don't know where you will be. So yes, the problem with data, to get up-to-date data. But it's not only that, it's also that what to do when we have data and this data is not harmonized. What to do if this data doesn't match the data we have. And then what to do if the formats don't match, if the format that this neighboring country has does not match with the formats that we have. So this is a huge problem. And I would say that this is one of the biggest problems we have in MSP in general and in the Baltic Sea in particular. Okay, so summing up. So what have we learned today? So we have learned today that MSP is a way to organize the sea in a smarter way, which allows us to look into the future, to prevent conflicts. Remember the windmill and the shipping, the collision, which allows to increase collaboration. Remember the railway, which allows us to protect the environment thanks to the ecosystem approach. Remember the weighing balance, and which allows also to increase the investment. We have also talked about how this is done. There is this the MSP directive, which applies to all European countries, all EU countries in the Baltic Sea, which is a set of rules, I said, a set of minimum common requirements to avoid conflicts, to achieve coherence. And then we have the Helcom Basa. I told you the story about Helcom Basa, two separate organizations which are together in order to increase cooperation and to achieve coherent MSP across borders. And then I talked about data. I told you about Kai, the planner. I told you about the problems he faced when he was planning his wind farm. The problems with formats, with harmonization. And I told you that this is probably one of the biggest challenges we face in MSP and in the Baltic Sea also. So that's it. Thank you very much. And if you want to ask me something, of course you cannot do it now, but if you see me around, I will be glad to answer any question. Thank you very much.